Then we're over to the NFC.
Oh, man.
We were all excited about Tampa getting in the playoffs. We're all excited about the noise they were going to be able to make. Todd Bowles, the defense, Baker, this offense. They beat Detroit. They beat Philly. But all of a sudden, they don't control their own destiny. Atlanta benches Kirk Cousins, and Atlanta is now in control of the NFC South.
It is wild. I mean, I think of this game against the Cowboys, like, is there anyone that didn't think on that play when Baker was able to extend the play and get the ball out of his hands? I'm like, oh, they're winning this game. It's over. Yeah. I actually missed the fumble. I thought, what's going on? Like, I thought, it was just a tackle and he was down. And I saw the Cowboys guys running with the ball, but I didn't even realize that he had stripped it off of him. I had complete confidence that Baker Mayfield was scoring on that possession. But yeah, it is wild because you think of Baker in this Tampa team as a team they've beat the Detroit Lions. They've beat the Eagles. I mean, they're a team that you would think they get in the playoffs that, you really are fearful of. But I put Atlanta Falcons kind of back in that category of, like, the Broncos. Man, we think they're pretty good. Maybe they could win a game, but I don't see them really making it much further than the first round of the playoffs, just with really some of the struggles. But now you enter Michael Penix, and this is a whole new story, Fitz.
Yeah, I mean, a good way to make a rookie quarterback making his first appearance feel comfortable?
Score on defense?
Score not just once, but twice. Score twice on defense. But I'll tell you what, the things that we talked about with Penix coming into the lineup, the very first play, they line up in pistol, they go play action. Now it ends up being incomplete, but they run a big post down the middle of the field, and they've got to come back on the left side. He throws a laser to Ray McLeod, gets batted down. But I think those are the type of things. That was kind of a statement play of, like, this is what we now are and what we can do. And then for me, the first third down of the game, you're nervous. He's thrown into this situation. There's a lot of pressure on him. They're still playing to be a team that can make the playoffs. 3rd and 7, he makes a great read and a great throw to Drake London over the middle. He goes for 19 yards. That told me a lot about Michael Penix Jr. and who he's going to be. But it was a different looking Atlanta offense, and I think it was the right move. It's so hard to watch Kirk Cousins on the sideline, standing there dressed out, not in the game. But I think this was the right move for these guys. And, the big thing now is they're playing Washington this week. Can they go to Washington and get a win? That's going to be, can they make the playoffs or not? I'll probably ride on this next game.
Yeah, I'm looking at how Jaden Daniels played this weekend. I don't know how good you feel about that either. So, Tampa Bay might be back in this thing quickly. But I think you look at Tampa, I mean, you lose to Dallas after 4 straight wins, and then you finish Carolina, New Orleans at home. Their problem is they have to finish with a better record than the Falcons because Atlanta beat them both times. They hold the head-to-head tiebreaker. One of them was our Thursday night football game where Kirk Cousins throws for 500 yards, which is crazy to think. Here we are now talking about the excitement we have for this Michael Penix-led Falcons offense. But I think you can clearly see in this tape, as we always say, the tape doesn't lie. It's not just about how the quarterback plays. You could see an elevation, in my opinion, of just the team and their energy and a little bit of, like, hope that, hey, we can do something different. And not only that, we talked about this a little bit last week. Zach Robinson now gets to unlock that entire playbook of really what we think of when we think of Sean McVay influenced offenses, Kyle Shanahan's of the world, that Shanahan schemes where we're half rolling out with the quarterback, really making the defense have to defend horizontally and vertically the entire field. And it really goes great with Bijan Robinson and the way he's been able to run the football. I think it'd be interesting to see what's week 2 look like in this offense now that, you believe in him, but that's practice tape. Now you get him out on a real field. You see him do some of these things. He was quick. He was decisive in decision-making. I'd like to see how this offense unlocks next week. And it also puts teams at a little bit of a problem because they don't know exactly who the Falcons are now.
They don't have a lot of film.
Right? So you don't know what you might get. And so I like that scenario for Atlanta. But this is a big game. They got to win it because, I mean, you look at that for Tampa, that's an easy finish. Carolina, New Orleans, that they should be able to get done. Now, having said that,
no,
Carolina's better.
Yes.
They are better.
So you can talk all you want about the playoff. Yeah, I never made the playoffs. You did. I'm going to defer to you on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I was Carolina for a lot of my career. Okay. They started off horrible. Bryce Young gets benched. Andy Dalton comes in. But the job that they've done from being 1-7 to now, they have 3 wins and 4 losses in their last 7 games. But it's like if you look at the games that they've lost, one score losses to KC, Tampa, and Philly. And then they just beat Arizona, who essentially that was a playoff game for Arizona, knocked them out of playoff contention. So Carolina was a pushover, is no longer a pushover, and they could have a real say. This was a fun thing for me. At the end of the year, you don't have much to play for. But look, you do, because you can go and ruin Atlanta's season. You can go and ruin Tampa's season. Those are things that are great feelings for a team that has really struggled, but they're building. They've really built this year. Bryce Young has put together a solid second half of the season, and Coach Canales has that team headed in the right direction, which goes a long way. But I'll be quiet because now we have to talk about things like the 1 seed in the NFC and even just the NFC West. Those are two things I think that are going to be really interesting these last few weeks. It just seems like that 1 seed is going to come down to week 18, Minnesota at Detroit.
It does. I mean, I talked about this last week on our Thursday night game, is that did anyone over the last 6 weeks talk about Minnesota Vikings being the 1 seed of the conference? I mean, no one said it. And here we are. It's like they're the quietest 13-win team at this point in the season I've ever heard of. I mean, they have done nothing but continue to win games. I think their last loss was when we had them on Thursday Night Football against the Rams. Yeah. So he's been on an absolute roll. And you think about really where they're at in the season. It's like, man, sometimes you say, all right, I think teams talk about, man, can you get week 18 to be a little bit of a bye and already be in the playoffs and take a break? But we've seen that hasn't been really good for teams going into the first week of the playoffs. They've actually not played well sometimes when they rest their guys. I did it. I know I experienced it in 2017. We sat out week 18, to the last week of the season against the Niners. And then we played our worst game of the year, the first round of the playoffs against the Falcons. So I've experienced that some, and teams think about that break. But then sometimes do you think, hey, you know what? We'd rather just play all good games, big games, lots of energy, be at our best. You think of this Vikings team, they have the Packers, and then they got a chance, if they can get that done, to go to Detroit against a beat-up defense. Insane. Beat them in Detroit and get a bye week and be the 1 seed in the playoffs, where you only got to win 2 games to get to the Super Bowl.
The Fighting Sam Darnolds, baby. I mean, some people, some analysts had him on Pumpkin Watch earlier in the season.
That? Pumpkin
super
watches?
Early in the season. And you know what Sam has done? He's just stepped up time and time again, just like everybody expected. Throws the game-winning hole shot versus Seattle.
That was a sick play. And got rolled up, a little banged up. You're like thinking whether he might come out the game, and then great pocket movement there, gets up in there and throws a freaking dime. But I will say this, you did put him on Pumpkin Watch. But going back to that Carolina conversation, I do have to give you some flowers on that. One of your big things about young quarterbacks that you've always said is that sometimes when they're struggling, if you would just take them out, let them watch a veteran have some success, and watch the offense just grow some confidence because they know there's going to be some consistency at the position. Don't think Carolina's not in this position because Andy Dalton came in, provided a spark there, and then all of a sudden Bryce Young gets to walk into an offense that's playing confidently. So you might have gone Pumpkin Watch a little early, but Sam Darnold got you on that one, but you were right about Bryce Young and where he's in.
Yeah. Well, I do know a thing or two, but I'm certainly, wrong plenty too. But you're going to have to explain this to me because we were having this discussion about the NFC West, and it was my understanding, we have the Seattle-Chicago game this weekend. The Rams are playing the Cardinals. So it was my understanding that unless Seattle loses and the Rams win, that this week 18 showdown of Seattle and the Rams is going to be for all the marbles. That's what's really going to matter. But you're telling me it looks a little bleak for the Seahawks now.
It is. It's going to be more challenging because there is a scenario where the Rams win this weekend. I think they're playing Saturday night against the Cardinals. And then also if the Seahawks beat the Bears, where the Rams could still win the division without even having to beat Seattle week 18. And the reason is when you get down to these tiebreakers, and I know, Fitz, you've not had a lot of experience and have to worry about playoff tiebreakers.
Hold on. I did in 2015 lose a tiebreaker. We were 10-6. Yeah, 10-6 and didn't make the playoffs. It happened to me twice in my career.
I do feel bad for you.
We lost a tiebreaker to the Steelers. But yes, go ahead.
Okay, you one time. Anyways, so if the Rams win and the Seattle Seahawks win, There's some scenarios there. Like, so for instance, when you start talking about these tiebreakers, you go first head to head, obviously in a division matchup. And then you're going to go, with record within the division. Then you're going to get into common games, et cetera, et cetera. And you eventually get down to conference record, then strength of victory. So the Rams Seahawks would actually
old SOV. Okay.
They would go all the way to strength of victory if the Rams and Seahawks win this week. Next week they play each other. They would go all the way down to strength of victory if the Seahawks happen to win and they both finish with the same record. And it would be that the Rams right now currently hold the lead in strength of victory. So you think of the Rams have wins over the Vikings. They have wins over the Buffalo Bills. So unless those teams fall off, then, and lose maybe the last 2 weeks, then the strength of victory will go to the Rams. And so they could technically this weekend have it sealed by Saturday or probably Sunday when those games are over. I think they need it's a bunch of scenarios, but really they need Buffalo to win. They need, Cincinnati to probably beat Denver because that's one of the wins Seattle had, and then Washington beating Atlanta. So there's a couple scenarios there. There's other games too that could matter, but basically any teams that they've each beat wins, and it could decide it. And so I think for this one, the Rams have a chance to win it in week 17, which is crazy with a 1-4 start, losing half their starters on offense for the first half of the season. Pretty crazy to think they might wrap up the division in week 17.
Yeah, that's absurd. And this is, it's the same old story for the Rams, right? We've seen it before, but I got to imagine that's another team. You were talking about Cincinnati. The Rams are another team I don't know that anybody really wants to play. And one of the things about the Rams that's most impressive to me, their ability to control the clock, these long drives. We saw it this last week with New England and Buffalo, where you're kind of annoyed because Buffalo doesn't have the ball at all in the first quarter.
Yep.
And it's like, what's the best defense against a great offense? Well, the best defense is to not give them the ball, which I think the Rams have a unique ability to do that with Kyron Williams, with the ball control, with the passing to Puka and Cooper, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. When you watch them, they're one of those teams that goes on those, 6, 7, 8, 9 minute drives. And that can really, really throw a wrench into this NFL playoff season in the NFC.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think that they're going to be a tough out if they can get in just because of that alone. They're built for that kind of style of football. And another, pretty crazy for them is that, obviously the Jets haven't been a great team, but it's a setup game. Anytime you're going West Coast to East Coast, playing in a cold weather game,
that is
a setup game. And you got 2 big games against the Cardinals and Seahawks. So to get out of there with a win and do it the way they did it is playing physical, just ball control offense was impressive to see.